Welcome to Money and Freedom, the podcast where you learn to become financially free using value investing. How do we defy our instincts? There's something about money and the stock market that really triggers some very primordial instincts, almost like we're facing a tiger or a lion. Even if there is no tiger, obviously there is no tiger, it's just money, right? But even if there's nothing wrong, that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. A while ago, I went out for dinner with friends and I asked my friend, "So how are you doing?" "Not very well," she said. "It's not going very well. I'm feeling very depressed." And I asked her, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I thought something really serious had happened, like her mother-in-law had died back home in Denmark and something, or maybe one of the kids, I don't know. And she said, "Well, it's the stock market. Don't you feel it too?" And honestly, I don't. I didn't know what she meant because this was beginning of February, end of January 2025, and the Standard & Poor 500 was up 3%. So I had no idea what she was talking about. And I asked her a little bit about which stock she was invested in. And this is not one of my students. It's just a friend. So she doesn't invest the way that I do. But the way that she reacted out of nothing, there was no tiger. No one had died, no one was sick, and the stock market was doing great. There was no problem whatsoever. But that's how we react. I asked a little bit more, so what was this coming from? And she said, well, last year was so good. We were expecting a return of 17% this year. And I'm like, but we're not even, we're about a month into the year. I think you can wait a little bit with making any conclusions, right? And around those days, I received an email from a former student, and she complained to me. She said, "This isn't working." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, 2025 is not turning out very well. It's not performing well." And I asked her, "Do you mean 2024? And she said, "No, I mean 2025. And I said, "But we're not even a month into the year." So those are the reactions I hear, and I hear this stuff all the time. And why does this happen? Well, it's the thing with fear and greed. That's what money can trigger, the stock market in particular. And why is that? It's so interesting. It really, really is. I think it's super interesting. Well, first of all, as human beings, we were developed in a certain way. We were hunters. And we had to protect our families against things like lions and tigers and whatever. So we have these reactions that have nothing to do with the world that we live in today. It's very, very natural, but we have to learn to control it a little bit. And the thing about money is that it affects everything in your life. You need money to eat well, to have a house to sleep in, to put your children to a nice school, to travel, to put clothes on your body and shoes on your feet. And when something is teasing you about money or the stock market, it makes you fear that you're going to lose all of those things. And that's very scary. And that's when you have to think about it a bit more rationally. So what can you do if you enter a period where you are worried about what the stock market is doing? What can you actually do? And I'm going to talk about this in two levels. First, we're going to talk about some practical things you can do. And then we're going to talk more about other things that are not directly related to money. So first of all, first thing you can do is you need to have some savings. And some people have this idea that you need to invest everything you earn right away. All your savings must be invested at all times. And I want to challenge that thinking, because what you're actually buying when you have savings is you're buying something. You're buying peace of mind. You're also buying your ability to stomach volatility in the stock market. I think you should have two types of savings. One is an emergency savings for anything like if your car breaks down or if your mother-in-law actually gets sick and looks like she's about to die in another country, you can fly there without even blinking. And the other one is security savings. I usually don't swear on the podcast. Please take the children out of the room. I'm going to swear because this is the kind of saving that some people call a fuck-off account. Sorry about that. Okay, so how much should you have in these two kinds of savings? The first one, the emergency fund, is for something like buying a plane ticket or fixing your car or the washing machine. Who can live without a washing machine? I don't know. So it needs to be replaced. So that would be around 5,000 euro or dollars, something like that. A security saving, or the F account, is where you are willing to resign from your job right away without having another one. Or you can even stomach the idea of getting laid off. So how much should that be? Well, it depends. It depends also on which kind of country you live in, if there's any welfare. But usually I would say around 3 to 6 months salary. And like I said, apart from giving you peace of mind and the ability to stomach volatility, it also makes you stomach other things in life. Like it makes you able, it gives you courage to make bold career moves. Another thing, another very related is you should always live beneath your means, meaning you should always spend less than you earn. That was point number 1. Point number 2 is don't leverage. Do not borrow money to invest. Do not get a lot of debt in any case. And most people know not to take out a huge bank loan with high interest rate and invest those money. We're not that stupid, right? But there are different ways of leveraging. And some of them are almost invisible. For example, on many platforms, you have a margin account, which means you're actually borrowing money, but you don't know it. How do you figure out if you have a margin account? Usually it would tell you on the platform, but if you can't see it anywhere, there's a very easy solution to that. Call them, ask them, or use the chat function and ask them, and then ask to have it removed. There were many peers of Warren Buffett that also invested like he did, but they disappeared. You can almost say like it was a race. Who was the best one? And they were probably just as talented as Warren Buffett, but they did one mistake, and that was leverage, using debt. It has destroyed a lot of good investors. The problem with debt is that it makes you more vulnerable. It will increase your losses exponentially. The more you lose, the more you lose with debt, even more. And it's also, it affects the way that you think. In the sense, it makes you vulnerable. It makes you more prone to do panic things in the market, like hitting that sell button. That was the second thing. The third thing is, remember that volatility happens to everybody. It's really important to keep in mind. Yes, we all have those days where something will go down, something we're invested in, it looks red on the screen, and it happens to all of us. It's just part of the game. You can look up any stock, any company, and then look how the stock price developed over 12 months, over a year. And it will go up and down and up, and sometimes more one than the other. But it's never a straight line. It just never is. And no one is immune to this. Not even Warren Buffett. And this is important to remember. It's sometimes useful to study his investment cases. The thing about seeing something red on your screen is, let's say you invested in something, and the first thing it does is it turns red the next day. And this is almost like a law of physics. It's like, it's a law. It's just something, you invest in something, the next day it will fall. I mean, think about it that way. It's just, you can joke about it. And when someone says, oh, this stock is falling, then just say, oh, yeah, that's because I invested in it. Because it's like, it happens. And then at some point, if you did your your work well, if you did your research, it will turn around. But just remember, it's not because you did something wrong. Not necessarily. I mean, I can't tell it from here if you did something wrong or not. But it doesn't mean necessarily that you did something wrong. If the company is sound, if you found a wonderful company, it will straighten out. There's a really nice quote here, which is, in the short term, the market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. What does that mean? Well, it means in the short term, it's going to deviate from what the company really is. The stock price is going to deviate from the truth, you could say. But just because it's the market, just because Mr. Market is a bit crazy. But in the long term, it will align with the values within the company. Stock prices are affected by all kinds of events and moods in the short term. But in the long term, it is the quality of the business that will determine the stock price. And talking of that this happens to all of us, let's just look at one of Warren Buffett's investment cases. He invested in the Washington Post, and he had calculated that it was a very nice price with a high margin of safety, and he was sure about it. But nevertheless, within a year after he first invested in the Washington Post, the stock price dropped 25%. What did he do? He bought more, as should you if you're sure about your case. Volatility in the market can really be a friend if you use it right and if you stop being scared about it. That was point number 3. Let's go to point number 4. One thing, and if you've listened a little bit to the podcast, you know that I really stand for doing your research. So research the company you invested in, even if you already did the research, which I really hope you did before investing. But if you find that you get scared again, do the research one more time. Do it again. Of course, you should never buy stocks in anything that you haven't researched. And you want to make sure that it's a business you understand and that you like the management. And you want to make sure that there's a moat in this company, something that protects them from competition, competitive advantages. You also want to make sure that they don't use leverage, that they don't have too much debt. And all of these things I talk about in the ebook that you can download. I'll put a link below. Download it. You can, and the checklist, I'll give you a checklist as well, so you know what to look at. This is something that is figure-outable. And the idea here is that you have to think like an owner. And this is important. Most people think like someone who owns a piece of paper where the price can go up and down. Forget about all that. Think of the whole business. Do you like the whole business? Would you buy the whole thing? If you happen to be an entrepreneur, you really have an advantage because you know how to think like an owner. If you're not an entrepreneur, well, try to think like an owner anyway. Look at the big picture, the holistic version of investing. And here's a really nice quote from Warren Buffett. He says, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. We can turn that around and saying, you know, if you know what you're doing, there's less risk. So that's the important thing. That was point number 4. Let's continue to point number 5. Pay a reasonable price. This is the essence of value investing. The price and the value. The price is the stock price. The value is what is inside the company. This is also what we call margin of safety. Some people say, you know, investing like a value investor is like buying stocks cheap. And I really don't like that way of putting it. What people do when they talk about cheap stocks, then they don't think like an owner. They think like somebody buying a piece of paper. They tend to look at the stock price, and when it goes down, they think it's on sale. But that's just wrong, because you have to relate it to the business. So that's why we don't talk about it like that. Price and value, we always compare it. So if we go back to the Washington Post case, Warren Buffett had calculated that the stock price was trading at 25% of the value inside the company. And you can say that's like buying $1 for 25 cents. Now, I told you before that it kept on dropping, the stock price. What does that mean then? Well, that means now you can actually buy $1 for 20 cents. So you should keep buying if you did the research and believe in the value and the future of the company, right? So that's why it's important to research the company and calculate the stock price compared to the value of the company. Well, actually, you calculate the value and compare it to stock price, the other way around. That was point number 5. Let's continue to point number 6. If you've done all of this and you're still nervous, you're still like jittery, is just about to hit the panic button, like, take me out of here, do this. Distract yourself. You know, when we talk about habits, you have 3 kinds of habits. You have negative habits, that would be something like smoking. And you have positive habits, which would be something like working out or investing. I would call that a positive habit. And then you have the neutral ones. They don't really do anything good or bad, which could be something like watching a Netflix series. I mean, it's not a great use of time, but it doesn't kill anybody either, and doesn't deteriorate your health or your wealth, unless if you do it all the time. So when you're in a situation that you're still about to hit the panic button, you've done all of the right things, distract yourself. And here you can actually use the neutral habits. I would say it's okay to do something that doesn't harm anybody, but it's not super great either, like watching a Netflix series. I mean, it's better if you could take one of the more positive habits, like go out for dinner with friends, have some quality time, a great match of tennis if you play tennis, or golf or whatever, where you get some exercise as well, hiking in nature, playing Monopoly with your kids and connecting with your kids. I would call that a positive habit. Whatever can keep your mind off worrying about the stock market, do it. As long as it's not one of the, don't snort coke, right? Don't do any of the negative things. Stay away from that. But positive or even neutral habits are fine if it makes you calm down. The very last resort, so that was point number 6. We're moving on to point number 7. The very last thing is outsource the whole process. Make someone else invest for you. Now, if you do this, it's super important that you don't do the same pattern, like panicking, looking over the other person's shoulder. You have to really outsource it. And how do you do this? Well, one way would be passive index investing, but there are some problems with that as well, because you could become vulnerable if there's a big bubble. Because index investing, this is a longer discussion, there's a mechanism within them, the way that most indices are calculated, that makes them follow the bubble. The other way could be to find a good value fund, a hedge fund, and there are many of them. I'm not going to list them. The third very easy way would be to invest in Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company. But that's a public traded company. Then you have to do what you always do. You have to figure out if the price and if there's a margin of safety, basically, if the price didn't go up too much compared with what's inside of the company. And any investment, even the most wonderful business like Berkshire Hathaway, can be a horrible investment if you buy the stock at a too high level compared to what's inside the company. Good. Let's say you did all of this and you're still not feeling great about something. If it's the stock market or something else that's worrying you. So now I'm stepping into the less practical part, the more mindset part of it. So what else can you do? What can you do to create inner peace? And this can happen, these periods in our lives where we feel like we are panicking a little bit inside. This can happen because of the stock market development of volatility, or it can be maybe you're afraid that there's going to be a third world war, or maybe you're having a fight with someone important in your life and you start ruminating about it. How do we stop ruminating? When we did everything practical. We have a savings account. We did all of this. What else can we do that's not directly related to money? Point number 1 is plan some screen-free time, especially if you're worried about something that comes up in the media. So if you're worried about what's going to happen, is it a third world war? Well, don't read the news then. Take a break from the news. Or are you, every time someone writes, there's going to be a stock market crash, you panic. Well, get away, right? Get away from the screen. And how much time away from the screen? Well, even a few hours is great. But if you're really in a vulnerable position, a whole weekend would be so great if you could go camping somewhere without your phone. That would be great. That was point number 1. Point number 2, consciously cultivate some positive thoughts. One thing that I find really encouraging is the idea that you can only think one thought at the time. And you can choose, do you want it to be a positive one or a negative one? Well, you do have the neutral as well, but you can only think one thought at the time. So whatever you're brooding about, you can push it away. You can choose what you think about, and that's really great. And the great technique here is if you could, whatever is worrying you, if you could replace that thought with the complete opposite thought. Or you can, actually, what I really wanted to say here is, if you can find some kind of image that calms you down, then use that. That can either be something in the future, or it can be something from the past. So if you have a great memory of your grandma singing a lullaby for you or whatever, kissing you on the forehead, then dwell on that. Think about that. Whatever makes you feel good. How do you know if it's the right memory? Well, how does it feel? Does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel happy? Does it make you smile? Well, that's the one you should think more about. So that was the second one. The third one that I almost made a spoiler on is that you should envision the opposite of what's worrying you. What does that mean? It means if you are afraid that there'll be another war, then envision something peaceful. If you're afraid that there's going to be a huge stock market crash with exactly those things that you're invested in, well, envision prosperity. And not only envision it, but feel it. The key is really in how you feel. If you're having a fight, well, find a nice memory with that exact person and try to make that past memory something that happens in the future. Like extract the nice memory into the future. So let's say you're having a fight with a child. Then remember something nice that happened where you laughed together. Take that, put it in the future. On your next vacation, see you laughing together. That was point number 3. Moving on to point number 4. And this is get enough sleep, eat healthy, and exercise. Okay, thanks, Mom. But really, it's like, I know this, can you please? But really think about it for a moment. I'm a mom, yes. And what really became clear with me when I had toddlers is how affected they are by these 3 basic things: sleep, food, and exercise. They need to eat that breakfast and something healthy. We need to get outside and run around a little bit, and they must sleep enough. If either 3 of these is a little bit off, you're going to have a hell of a toddler day, right? And inside, we're all kind of toddlers. That thing that is panicking, that's your toddler. That's your inner toddler. So you have to, the basic thing in order. So we need to get those in order. So, of course, you need to have your 3 meals a day, even if you don't feel like it. You need to get out there, get some exercise, and sleep. A little bit about sleeping. Because this is something that, you can force yourself to eat. Can you force yourself to sleep? It's a little bit more difficult. So I really worked on the sleep patterns. And I have some tricks for you right here. One thing that really helped me is the hour before you go to sleep. What do you do there? Obviously, do not be on the screens, right? It's not a good time because of the light and all that stuff. We all know this. What I do is I divide the hour into 23 times 20 minutes. So 20 minutes, I plan the next day. So what's going to happen the next day? If you need to do something specific, put out, whatever gadgets you need. Or if you're doing a sport, like put out the clothes. And then I write down a list of 3 things that I must do tomorrow. It's usually a much longer list than that, but the top 3 things must be the one that I cannot go to sleep tomorrow evening if I haven't done these 3 things. And then the next 20 minutes, I'll take a warm bath or whatever personal hygiene ritual you have, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, like something physical for your body. If it's wintertime, I really love taking a long bath with Epsom salt and stuff like that. And the third thing is just be in bed, expect it to take 20 minutes and relax. And the very important thing here is to breathe as if you're already sleeping. You can read something, not on a screen. You can read a book. You can, do something, but it cannot be exciting, right? You cannot watch a thriller. But you can also just lie in bed and relax. An hour might be a little bit too much time for some people if you're living a busy life. You can make it 3 times 10 minutes if you want to cut down on the time. And of course, when it comes to sleeping, very important too, but we know this, right? Keep your bedroom cool, keep it dark, and keep it silent. That was point number 4. Let's move on to point number 5. Connect with nature. Super important. It's so healing for us. And 2 things I would do. Get out every morning for a short walk. I have a dog, so I have to walk the dog anyway. And I live near a beach, so that's really nice with the sunshine. And even if there's no sunshine, you still get the light. If you don't have a dog, just do it anyway. First thing you do in the morning, get up, get outside. Even if it's, I have kids, so I can walk the dog after the kids go to school. So even if it's just sitting near a window, if you can't leave your kids, just the first thing you need to do is get some light. And the other thing I would do is every weekend commit to taking a walk in nature. Some place with something that is actually growing, not just a walk down the block in New York City or wherever you live. Some place with trees, something growing. Every weekend, once a week, at least an hour. Just do it. It is so healing. Fresh air in your lungs, the sound of birds, all these things. And of course, very important also is breathe. You have to breathe as you are in nature. Get some solid breathing technique. That was point number 5. Point number 6 is find a simple activity that calms you. What could it be? For me, at some point when I just had a baby, I got obsessed with knitting. I don't knit anymore. But at that point, when I was so tired, it was the monotony of the movement really calmed me down. It was super nice. Today, I really like to do crossword puzzles. I don't know what it could be for you. I'm sure you have an idea yourself. But something like that, where you have to use your mind. You do have to focus a little bit. And that takes your mind off whatever it is that is worrying you. And then do it 100%. Here comes a little story. When I was a teenager, I had a friend who suffered from some kind of mental, not a full-blown illness, but he was on the verge of some kind of paranoia or schizophrenia. And he got one good advice from a family member, which was get a job as in a post office, which he did. He actually got a job in a post office. Go to work from 9 to 5 or whatever length of the workday and only think of the job. You cannot think of what's worrying you while you're sorting the mail. So he did that. He was sorting the mail during the day and he made the agreement that whatever it was he was getting kind of obsessed with, he could think about that after work. And he healed himself that way. I thought that was so amazing. It left a lasting impression on me. So I have used this as a rule in my life. When I work, I work. I'm not allowed to think of whatever it is in my life, if it's a dying mother or some heartbreak or a fight or the stock market or a war in a faraway region. I'm not allowed to think about it at all. I can think about it at 7 o'clock or whatever. I mean, and that's actually a really good technique. Set a timer on your phone. That's when you're allowed to think about it, and give yourself a limited time to worry. 15 minutes. You can worry all you want in 15 minutes and then let it go. And it works because you know it's not like you're ignoring it. You're allowed to think about it, but only in that time schedule. It really does help. That was point number 6. Moving on to point number 7, and that is do something. Do something about the exact thing that is worrying you. So let's say you're worried about a specific war. But what can you do? Can you donate some money? Can you help some refugees? I did that I had Ukrainian refugees living in my house for about 6 weeks, and that really kept me busy. I had to help them find a school, help them get the pet to the vet, all these kind of things. If it's the stock market, I would say there's a really easy solution to that, and that is study more about the stock market. Listen to this podcast, read my free book you find down here, and even take my value investing course. If you're worried about a stock market crash, the best thing to do is really get into value investing, because it's like a cure against stock market crashes. And that was the last point. That was point number 7. So that was it for now. Thanks. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, follow, and review it on your favorite platform. It really helps the podcast grow. If you have any questions, feel free to write me at X. My handle is my first name, Beile, spelled B-E-I-L-E.